Captain Elias Carter leaned against the polished steel counter of a dimly lit bar inside Tryon 9, a bustling trading hub floating in neutral space. The place smelled of oil, alien spices, and adventure. Merchants, bounty hunters, and spacefarers filled the room, speaking in dozens of different languages. The hum of distant starships docking and departing could be heard in the background. Elias wasn't looking for trouble. He had just delivered a cargo shipment and planned to leave as soon as his crew was ready. But trouble had a way of finding him. A shadow fell over his table. He looked up to see two Scifi standing before him. The Scifi were a tall, reptilian species with shimmering blue-green scales and large golden eyes. Their movements were graceful, and their expressions, though different from humans, clearly showed distress. The male Scifi spoke first, his voice trembling. Captain Elias Carter. Elias studied them for a moment. Depends on who's asking. The female Scifi stepped forward. Please, we need your help. Our daughter. She's been taken. Elias sighed. Kidnappings weren't uncommon in deep space, especially in lawless sectors. Pirates, slavers, and mercenaries all operated freely, taking what they wanted. But he wasn't a bounty hunter. I'm sorry, he said, taking a sip of his drink. I'm not in the rescue business. The father, whose name was Valen, quickly pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It projected a hologram of a young Scifi girl, probably no older than 10 in human years. Her large golden eyes were filled with fear. Her name is Nerixa, he said. The Black Talons took her. At the mention of that name, Elias froze. The Black Talons were a ruthless gang of cyber-augmented mercenaries. They'd raided ships, kidnapped innocents, and sold them to the highest bidder. They had no mercy. Elias leaned forward, suddenly interested. Where did they take her? To a hidden base in the Red Abyss, near the asteroid belt of Cyros. The mother, Lariah, replied. We tried to contact the authorities, but no one dares to challenge the Black Talons. Her voice broke. You're our only hope. Elias exhaled slowly. The Red Abyss was a dangerous sector, filled with ion storms and pirate activity. A rescue mission, there would be suicide. You must have someone else, he said. A Scifi warrior, a hired mercenary. Valen shook his head. Our people are healers, not fighters. We have no weapons. We cannot take lives. Elias rubbed his jaw, thinking. The Scifi were known for their advanced biotechnology. Medicines that could heal wounds instantly, devices that could extend lifespans. If they were offering something in return, it would be valuable. We will give you anything, Lariah pleaded. Technology, wealth, knowledge beyond human understanding. Elias looked at them both, then at the hologram of Nerixa. The little girl's terrified eyes haunted him. He could walk away. It wasn't his problem. But deep down, he knew he wouldn't be able to sleep at night, knowing he had turned his back on an innocent child. He sighed, finishing his drink. Then he stood up. I don't need a reward, he said. I'll do it because it's the right thing to do. Valen and Lariah looked at him in disbelief. You will help us. Elias nodded. Yeah, but I'll need my crew. We're going to have to be smart about this. The Black Talons are dangerous. The relief on their faces was visible, even for a non-human species. Lariah's eyes shimmered as she spoke. Thank you, Captain Carter. May the stars bless you. Elias pulled out his communicator and sent a message to his crew. Get back to the ship. We've got a rescue mission. As he walked toward the docking bay, he couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything. For the Scifi, for the Black Talons, and for humanity itself. Captain Elias Carter walked through the dimly lit corridors of his ship, the Iron Hawk. The hum of the engines vibrated beneath his boots as he stepped onto the bridge, where his crew was waiting. Seated at the controls was Reed Lawson, the ship's pilot, a man with sharp reflexes and a sharp tongue. Dr. Tessa Munro, the ship's medic, stood nearby, arms crossed, listening intently. Leaning against the weapons console was Jax Orin, their weapons expert and former bounty hunter. Nova, their engineer, was busy fixing a loose wire, but she was listening too. Elias didn't waste time. "We've got a job. A Sci-Fi girl named Nerixa has been kidnapped by the Black Talons. They're holding her in a base in the Red Abyss near Xyros." Reed let out a low whistle. "That's pirate territory. Those guys don't mess around." Jack smirked. "Yeah, and neither do we." Dr. Monroe frowned. "Why us, Elias? The Sci-Fi could have paid mercenaries." "They're not fighters," Elias said simply. "And I won't let some innocent kid be sold off while we sit here doing nothing." Nova tightened the last bolt on the panel she was working on and stood up. "So, what's the plan?" Elias pulled up a holographic map of the Black Talons' asteroid base. "We can't just blast our way in. They've got heavy defenses, but I found a weak spot. A hidden access tunnel on the asteroid's surface. If we get past their patrols, we can sneak inside." Reed raised an eyebrow. "And then what?" "Politely ask them to hand over the girl." Jax grinned. "No, we convinced them, with a few well-placed blaster shots." Elias smirked. "Exactly." Dr. Monroe sighed. "This is crazy." Elias met her gaze. "Yeah, but we've done crazier." She shook her head but smiled. "All right, Captain. Let's go save a kid." The journey to the Red Abyss. The Iron Hawk took off from the space station and jumped into hyperspace. The journey to the Red Abyss was tense. The closer they got, the more unstable the region became. The asteroid belt around Xyros was full of debris, abandoned ships, and pirate patrols. As they neared the Black Talons base, Nova's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, their scanners are powerful. If we fly in directly, they'll spot us." Elias frowned. "Suggestions?" Nova grinned. "We cloak the ship using an old trick, mask our energy signature by hiding inside a passing freighter's exhaust trail." Reed whistled. "Risky, but it just might work." The plan was set. As a large cargo hauler passed through the sector, the Iron Hawk followed closely, staying hidden within the ship's exhaust radiation. It worked. The Black Talon scanners didn't detect them. Once close enough, Elias guided the ship toward the asteroid's surface. They found the hidden access tunnel, a forgotten maintenance shaft. "This is it," Elias said. "Time to move." Inside enemy territory. The crew suited up in armored gear and slipped into the tunnel. The walls were cold, covered in dust and old wiring. The base above them buzzed with activity, raider voices, footsteps, and machinery. Elias led the way, moving silently. They had to be fast. They reached a security checkpoint. 2 guards stood by a control panel. Jax pulled out his silenced blaster and fired. The guards dropped before they could react. Elias checked the control panel. "Got it. Nerixa is in a holding cell in the central chamber." Reed peered down the hallway. "And that's bad news. The central chamber is also where the Black Talons gather." "Then we'd better be quick," Elias said. "The auction begins." As they neared the chamber, they heard a deep voice over a loudspeaker. "Welcome, buyers. This rare Sci-Fi child is the prize of the night." Elias' jaw clenched. He peeked inside. The room was filled with armed mercenaries and wealthy bidders, some from dangerous alien factions. In the center, Nerixa stood in a small containment field, her eyes wide with fear. The auction had begun. Jax muttered, "I hate slavers." Elias nodded. "We stop this now." He gave the signal. Jax tossed a flash grenade. Boom! A bright light filled the room. The team rushed in, weapons blazing. Jax and Reed fired at the guards, while Nova hacked into the control panel to disable the containment field. Elias charged forward, taking down a mercenary with a well-placed punch. Nerixa stumbled as the field disappeared. Dr. Monroe grabbed her and pulled her to safety. But before they could escape, a massive figure stepped into their path, a Black Talon lieutenant in full combat armor. You think you can just take her and leave? The armored warrior growled. Elias gritted his teeth. They were not out yet. Elias Carter gripped his blaster tighter as the Black Talon lieutenant stepped forward. The massive warrior's black combat armor gleamed under the dim lights of the chamber. His red cybernetic eye glowed as he studied Elias and his team. You made a mistake coming here, human, the lieutenant growled. His voice was deep, mechanical. Armor hummed with energy, powered by advanced cybernetic enhancements. Elias smirked. Yeah, I make a lot of mistakes. But this one, not so sure. The lieutenant moved fast, faster than any normal person. He lunged. Elias barely dodged, rolling to the side as the warrior's fist smashed into the floor, cracking the metal. Sparks flew. Jax raised his blaster and fired, but the shots bounced off the lieutenant's energy shield. He's got armor plating, Jax shouted. Reed cursed. Great, just what we needed. The other mercenaries in the room had recovered from the flash grenade. They opened fire. Blaster bolts zipped through the air. The battle was on. Fight for survival. Nova dove behind a cargo crate, hacking into a nearby control panel. I'm disabling the lockdown doors. Give me a second. Elias ducked behind cover as blaster fire rained down. He saw Dr. Monroe shielding Nerixa, keeping the terrified Sci-Fi girl out of harm's way. We don't have a second, Jax shouted, throwing a smoke grenade. A thick cloud filled the room, making it harder for the mercenaries to aim. Elias took the chance. He ran forward, dodging gunfire, and aimed his EMP grenade at the lieutenant's chest. Click. Boom. The grenade exploded in a pulse of blue energy. The lieutenant's shields flickered and died. Jax grinned. Now he's vulnerable. Elias didn't waste time. He charged, tackling the armored warrior. The two crashed into a metal table, sending crates flying. The lieutenant was strong, but Elias was fast. He landed a punch to the warrior's exposed jaw, then another to his side. The lieutenant roared and swung his arm. A metal fist slammed into Elias' ribs. Pain exploded through his side, but he gritted his teeth and stayed on his feet. Nova, tell me you got those doors open. Elias shouted. Beep. Nova punched the final command. Doors are open. We need to go, now. Elias dodged another punch and grabbed his blaster. He fired 2 shots into the lieutenant's exposed neck. The warrior staggered, then collapsed. Time to run, Elias yelled. Escape through fire. Dr. Monroe held Nerixa close as the team sprinted down the corridors of the base. Alarms blared. The Black Talons were in pursuit. We've got company, Reed shouted as armed raiders chased them. Jax turned, tossing a grenade down the hallway. Boom. The explosion shook the base, sending debris flying. They reached a hangar bay where several ships were docked. Their own ship, Ironhawk, was too far outside the base. We need a ship, Nova shouted. Elias scanned the hangar and spotted a Black Talon dropship. That one. The team sprinted toward it. More raiders appeared, firing. Reed covered the rear. His blaster took down 2 mercenaries. Go, go, go. Nova hacked the dropship's controls. I need 10 seconds. We don't have 10 seconds, Jax yelled. Elias grabbed a nearby turret and fired at the enemy troops, forcing them back. The hangar shook as explosions erupted. Beep. The ship's doors slid open. Get in, Nova shouted. Everyone piled inside. Elias was last, still firing at the Black Talons. One of the raiders aimed at him, but Jax shot first. Elias jumped aboard. Punch it. The engines roared to life. The dropship blasted out of the hangar just as the base's defenses activated, chased through the abyss. Reed took the pilot's seat. Bad news. We've got enemy ships on our tail. On the scanners, 3 Black Talon fighters closed in. Hold on. Reed twisted the controls. The dropship dove into the asteroid field, weaving between massive floating rocks. Enemy lasers zipped past them. Elias climbed into the gunner's seat. Let's give them a fight. Jax loaded the ship's cannons. Firing. Boom. A well-placed shot took out the first enemy fighter. The other two raiders kept coming. One of them fired a missile. Missile lock. Nova shouted. Reed spun the ship hard. The missile clipped an asteroid and exploded, shaking their ship. Elias lined up a shot and fired. The second enemy ship exploded in flames. Only one left. The last raider was skilled, dodging their shots. But Elias had an idea. Nova, open the cargo bay. Nova hit the switch. The doors at the back of the ship opened. Elias grabbed a spare fuel tank and tossed it out the back. As the enemy ship closed in, Jax fired at the tank. Boom! The explosion engulfed the raiders' ship. They were clear. Safe, but not done. As they left the red abyss, the crew finally took a breath. Dr. Monroe comforted Nerixa. You're safe now, she whispered. Elias looked at the terrified Sci-Fi girl and nodded. We're taking you home. But deep inside, he knew the Black Talons wouldn't forget this. And this was only the beginning. The Iron Hawk emerged from hyperspace, the swirling blue tunnel collapsing into a vast, starry expanse. In the distance, the lush green planet of Zifar Prime came into view, the homeworld of the Zifari people. Elias Carter leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhaling. The mission had been brutal, but Nerixa was safe. For now. Behind him, Dr. Tessa Monroe knelt beside the young Zifari girl, gently wrapping a blanket around her. Nerixa clung to her, shaking. The terror of her kidnapping was still fresh. It's okay, kid, Monroe whispered. You're going home. Nerixa's large golden eyes stared at her, filled with gratitude but also fear. They will come again, she said in a trembling voice. Elias frowned. He knew she was right. The Black Talons didn't let things go. Reed Lawson, the ship's pilot, glanced over at Elias. We should land quickly, drop the kid off, and get out before we bring trouble to the Zifari. Elias nodded, but something in his gut told him it wouldn't be that simple. A cold welcome. As the Iron Hawk descended into Zifar Prime's atmosphere, a fleet of sleek, white Zifari security ships approached. We expecting an escort. Jax Orin muttered, arms crossed. Nova checked the scanners. They've locked onto us, but aren't attacking. Looks like they want us to land in a designated zone. Elias sighed. I don't like this. Reed piloted the ship toward the Grand Zifari capital, where a landing platform extended from a towering crystalline palace. As soon as the Iron Hawk touched down, dozens of armed Zifari guards surrounded them. The ship's ramp lowered, and Elias stepped out first, hands raised in peace. Valen and Lariah, Nerixa's parents, rushed forward. Lariah sobbed as she pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tightly. Valen placed a trembling hand on Nerixa's head, his golden eyes filled with relief. Thank you, Captain Carter, Valen said. You have given us back our heart. Elias smiled. She's safe now. But before he could take another step, a deep voice interrupted. No, she is not. Elias turned to see a tall, elderly Zifari, dressed in flowing silver robes. His piercing gaze swept over the humans with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. Who are you? Elias asked. I am Elder Xeruan, head of the Zifari High Council, the old Zifari said. And while I thank you for bringing the child home, you have made a grave mistake. Elias frowned. A mistake. Xeruan's golden eyes darkened. The Black Talons will not stop until they reclaim what they believe is theirs. They will come here, and they will bring war to my people. Silence fell over the landing pad. Elias exhaled. Look, we didn't have a choice. You wanted your daughter back, right? Valen stepped forward. Of course, and we will forever be grateful. But Xeruan is right. The Black Talons do not forget. This world is peaceful. We are not warriors. If they come, we cannot stop them. Elias understood now. They were afraid. "We can help you prepare," Jax offered. "Set up defenses, weapons." Sauruan shook his head. "No, we do not fight wars, human. We survive. And if survival means giving them what they want, then that is what we must do." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Are you saying you just hand Nerixa back to them?" Leraya's grip on her daughter tightened. "Never." Zeruan sighed. "I do not wish to. But what choice do we have?" Elias took a step forward. "I can take her somewhere safe. The Iron Hawk can hide her. Keep moving." But Valen shook his head. "No, we will not run. She belongs with her people." Elias clenched his fists. "Then you need to fight." Zeruan looked at him sadly. "You do not understand our ways, Captain. But I fear we will not have the luxury of peace for long. The Black Talons are coming." Later that night, Elias stood on the balcony of the Sci-Fi Palace, looking out at the glowing city below. Dr. Monroe joined him, arms crossed. "So, what now?" "We wait," Elias said, "and we get ready." Before she could respond, Nova's voice crackled over the communicator. "Captain, you need to get back to the ship. Now." Elias grabbed his earpiece. "What's wrong?" Nova's voice was tense. "We picked up a massive fleet entering the system. Warships, and they're broadcasting a message." Elias' stomach sank. "Put it through." A deep metallic voice filled his earpiece. "To the Sci-Fi people, you have something that belongs to us. Surrender the girl, or your planet will burn." Elias turned to Monroe. "The Black Talons are here. The final stand." The Sci-Fi city fell into chaos. Ships evacuated civilians while the High Council debated what to do. Valen and Leraya held Nerixa close. "We must hide her," Leraya whispered. Zeruan was pale. "They will not stop." Elias slammed his fist on the table. "Then let's stop them first." Zeruan looked at him with tired eyes. "You would risk your lives for us." Elias grinned. "That's what humans do." Jax loaded his weapons. "Let's show these mercs what happens when they mess with the wrong people." The team gathered. The battle was coming, and Elias Carter was ready to fight. The skies above Zyphar Prime burned with enemy warships. The Black Talons had arrived in full force, their massive battle cruisers casting dark shadows over the peaceful cities below. Swarms of fighter ships zipped through the air, preparing to strike. On the palace balcony, Elias Carter adjusted his blaster, his face grim. "They're not here to negotiate." Nova's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Scans show at least 20 enemy ships in orbit, with ground troops preparing to drop." Jax Orin let out a low whistle. "Well, that's bad." Valen, Nerix's father, turned to Elias. "We cannot fight them. If we do, they will destroy everything." Elder Zeruan, the leader of the Sci-Fi Council, spoke with a heavy voice. "Perhaps, if we surrender Nerixa, they will leave." Leraya, Nerix's mother, clutched her daughter tightly. "No, we cannot give her to them." Elias stepped forward, voice firm. "Listen to me. Surrender is not an option. If you hand her over, they'll see you as weak. And next time, they'll take more than just one child." Zeruan's face darkened, but he knew Elias was right. Valen turned to Elias. "Then what do we do?" Elias cracked his knuckles. "We fight." Preparing for war. The Sci-Fi people had never fought a war before, but they weren't defenseless. Deep beneath the palace, Elias and his team discovered an ancient weapons vault filled with high-tech energy cannons, plasma rifles, and powerful shields. Nova's eyes widened. These weapons, they're centuries old, but still functional. Jax picked up a Sci-Fi rifle and smirked. "Looks like the pacifists had a warlike past." Zeruan sighed. "Long ago, we fought, but we chose peace over bloodshed. These weapons were hidden away, never to be used again." Elias grabbed a plasma repeater and tossed a rifle to Valen. "Well, today, you're using them again." The Sci-Fi trained quickly. They might not have been warriors, but they had courage. Meanwhile, Nova worked on hacking into Zephyr Prime's old planetary defense systems. If she could activate them, they might have a chance. But time was running out. The enemy descends. The Black Talon fleet hovered over the capital city, preparing to launch their ground assault. A transmission echoed through the city. "This is Commander Draxus of the Black Talons. Surrender the girl, or we will turn this planet to dust." Elias stood on the palace walls, looking up at the enemy ships. He pressed his communicator. "Come and get her." The first wave of dropships descended, unloading squads of heavily armed mercenaries. The battle began. The fight for Zephyr Prime. Blaster fire filled the air as the Sci-Fi defenders and Elias's team fought against the invading Black Talons. Jax took cover behind a statue, picking off enemies with precise sniper shots. That's one down. Elias charged forward, taking down 2 mercenaries with quick blaster shots. He ducked behind a barricade just as a grenade exploded nearby. Valen fought beside him, his hand shaking, but his aim steady. "We won't let them take our daughter." Nova shouted from the control station. "Hold the line. I'm almost in." Reed piloted the Iron Hawk through the battlefield, strafing enemy positions with its cannons. "I can't hold them off forever, boss." Then, the main enemy warship descended. Commander Draxus had arrived. Commander Draxus enters the battle. The Black Talon leader stepped onto the battlefield, a massive armored warrior with cybernetic implants and a glowing red eye. He raised his massive energy sword and pointed at Elias. "You should have given us the girl," he growled. Elias smirked, raising his blaster. "Yeah, well, I'm not really the surrendering type." Draxus charged. Elias dodged just in time as the energy blade slashed through a stone pillar, cutting it in half. Jax fired at the commander, but Draxus' energy shield absorbed the shots. Elias knew this fight wouldn't be easy. "Nova," he shouted, "tell me you have something." Nova grinned. "Say hello to Zephyr Prime's defense cannons." High above, ancient plasma turrets powered up and blasted the enemy warships. The sky lit up with explosions. Elias grinned. "Now we're talking." The final stand. The Black Talons began to fall back, their ships taking heavy damage. But Draxus wasn't done yet. The massive warrior lunged again, his sword slicing through the air. Elias barely blocked with his Sci-Fi shield, the force knocking him back. Draxus sneered. "You are nothing but a weak human." Elias wiped blood from his lip and smirked. "Yeah. Well, this weak human just beat your whole army." Nova activated one last system, a gravity pulse field. Draxus' armor locked up. He froze in place. Jax grinned. "I got the shot." Boom. Draxus fell. The Black Talons were defeated. Victory and a promise. As the last enemy ship retreated, the Sci-Fi people cheered. Elder Xeruan placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "You have saved our world. We will never forget this." Valen and Lariah hugged Nerixip tightly. She was safe. Elias smiled, exhausted. "Glad we could help." Jax clapped his hands. "So, do we get a reward, or?" Lariah smiled. "You have our eternal gratitude." Jax sighed. "I was hoping for treasure, but I'll take it." Elias looked up at the sky. The Black Talons had been defeated, but he knew they weren't gone forever. As the Iron Hawk prepared to leave, Elias made a silent promise. If the Black Talons ever returned, he would be ready. The battle was over. Zephyr Prime was safe. For now. Elias Carter stood near the Iron Hawk, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and violet. The Sci-Fi people were celebrating their victory, but Elias knew it wasn't truly over. Jax Orin walked up beside him, cleaning his blaster. "You look worried, boss." Elias sighed. "Because I am. The Black Talons don't take defeat lightly. Draxus is dead, but someone will take his place." Jax nodded. "Yeah, Merc groups like them always have a backup plan. Just then, Nova's voice crackled in Elias's earpiece. "Captain, we have a problem. Get to the command center. Now." Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed Jax and hurried toward the palace. A deadly message. Inside the Sci-Fi command center, Nova was hunched over a console, her fingers flying across the keys. Her face was pale. Valen and Elder Xeruan stood nearby, listening intently. "What is it?" Elias asked. Nova turned to him, her eyes serious. "I intercepted a transmission. The Black Talons are regrouping." Elias stiffened. "Where?" Nova pressed a button, and a holographic map appeared. It showed a massive asteroid base orbiting a dead star, a hidden stronghold of the Black Talons. "Their new leader just sent a message to all remaining mercenaries," Nova said. "They're planning something big." The transmission played. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the room. "The human who killed Draxus will suffer. We will burn everything he loves. We will make them beg for mercy. This is not over." Jax whistled. "Well, that's a problem." Elder Xeruan looked at Elias. "They will come again." Elias clenched his fists. "Not if we stop them first." Into enemy territory. Elias turned to his crew. "We need to take the fight to them." Jax raised an eyebrow. "You mean, go after them?" Nova smirked. "Now you're talking my language." Reed, their pilot, leaned against the wall. "That's a suicide mission, Carter. You know that, right?" Elias nodded. "Maybe. But if we don't end this now, they'll never stop hunting Nerixa or Sci-Fi Prime." Valen stepped forward. "We will help in any way we can." Elias shook his head. "No, Sci-Fi Prime needs to rebuild. This fight is ours." Xeruan nodded solemnly. "Then may the stars guide you to victory, Captain Carter." The crew headed to the Iron Hawk. Approaching the enemy base, the Iron Hawk slipped through the darkness of space, moving toward the asteroid stronghold. The base was massive, a floating fortress built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, surrounded by warships and defense turrets. Nova studied the scanners. "No way we're flying in unnoticed. Their security is tight." Jax grinned. "Good thing I brought explosives." Elias smirked. "We're not blowing up the whole thing, Jax. We need intel first. We get in, plant a tracker, and get out." Reed muttered, "I have a bad feeling about this." Elias strapped on his gear. "Let's move." Infiltration. Using a stealth approach, Elias and his team slipped onto the asteroid through an old cargo vent. Inside, the base was buzzing with activity. Black Talon mercenaries patrolled the halls, their armor gleaming under red emergency lights. Nova hacked into a security terminal. Their leader, his name is Karn Voss. He was Draxus' second-in-command, and he's got a fleet big enough to destroy a planet. Elias cursed. "Then we need to stop him before he moves." Jax planted explosive charges in key areas, while Nova uploaded a virus into the base's systems. Everything was going smoothly, until an alarm blared through the halls. "Nt Ryuderas DTTKTED." Jax groaned. Of course. Elias pulled out his blaster. Time to fight. Escape under fire. Mercenaries rushed into the hallways, weapons blazing. Elias took cover behind a metal crate, returning fire with deadly precision. Jax tossed a grenade, blasting a squad off their feet. Nova shouted, "Security's locking down the exits. We need another way out." Elias turned to Reed. "Get the ship ready. We're coming in hot." Reed's voice crackled over the comms. "You better hurry." The team fought their way through the base, dodging gunfire and narrowly avoiding explosions. Elias spotted a docking bay ahead. "There. Move." The crew sprinted toward an old Black Talon shuttle and hacked into its controls. Jax punched a mercenary in the face and grinned. "I always wanted to steal one of their ships." As they lifted off, enemy fighters pursued them. Elias shouted into his comm, "Reed, Get ready to blast these guys. The Iron Hawk swooped in, guns blazing, destroying the enemy fighters and escorting them to safety. A desperate plan. Back on their ship, Elias took a deep breath. That was close. Nova checked the tracker. We uploaded the virus. Now we can monitor their movements. Jax leaned against the wall. So, what now? Elias exhaled. Now, we hit them where it hurts. Nova smirked. I like the sound of that. The Black Talons wanted revenge. But Elias Carter was going to end this war, on his own terms. The Iron Hawk hovered in deep space, hidden behind a dense asteroid field. Inside, the crew was preparing for the final battle. Elias Carter stood at the center of the control room, arms crossed. We have one shot at this. If we fail, the Black Talons will come back stronger. Nova brought up the holographic map of the enemy's asteroid base. Our virus gave us full access to their systems. We can disable their shields, but only for a few minutes. Jax Orin cracked his knuckles. Then we hit them hard and fast. Reed, the pilot, leaned against the wall. And get out before they realize what's happening. Valen, standing nearby, looked at Elias. Are you sure this will end them for good? Elias nodded. If we take out their leader, Carnval, the rest of the mercenaries will scatter. No one will be left to rebuild the Black Talons. The plan was risky, but they had no choice. This was the only way to stop the Black Talons forever. The attack begins. The Iron Hawk powered up, engines roaring as it shot toward the enemy base. Nova's hands flew over the controls, activating virus. Now, inside the asteroid base, alarms blared as the Black Talons' defense systems shut down. Jax grinned. Looks like they weren't expecting that. Elias grabbed his blaster. Let's move. The Iron Hawk breached the outer docking bay, and the crew stormed inside. Enemy mercenaries rushed to stop them. Blaster fire filled the air. Explosions rocked the halls. Jax took cover behind a crate, returning fire. I love this job. Nova hacked into a door panel. Carnval's is in the command center. We need to hurry. Elias led the charge. No stopping now. The showdown with Carnval's. The command center was a large chamber filled with holographic displays and war maps. Standing in the center was Carnval, a tall, armored warrior with a scared face and glowing red cybernetic eye. He turned to face them, his voice deep and cold. I knew you would come, Carter. Elias raised his blaster. Then you know how this ends. Karn laughed. You think killing me will stop the Black Talons? We are everywhere. Elias smirked. Not after today. Karn lunged forward, drawing two massive energy blades. Elias dodged just in time as the blades slashed through a metal console. Sparks flew. Jax fired his blaster, but Karn deflected the shots with his blades. Nova hacked into the base's core systems. I can overload the reactor. We'll have 5 minutes before this place explodes. Elias dodged another attack, rolling across the floor. He raised his blaster and fired at Karn's cybernetic eye. The shot hit its mark. Karn staggered back, roaring in pain. Jax took the chance and shot Karn in the chest. The mercenary leader fell to his knees, gasping. Elias walked up to him, weapon ready. Karn's red eye flickered. You can't stop them all. Elias aimed at his head. Watch me. One final shot. Carnval's was dead. Escape before the explosion. Nova shouted, we need to go. Now. The base's reactor was melting down. Red lights flashed, and alarms screamed through the halls. Elias and his crew raced toward their ship, dodging falling debris and escaping enemy mercenaries. Jax threw a grenade behind them. Have fun with that. Boom. The crew jumped aboard the Iron Hawk. Reed fired up the engines. Hold on. As they blasted out of the asteroid, the entire Black Talon base erupted in a massive explosion. Fire and debris scattered into space. The Black Talons were no more. A new beginning, Back on Sci-Fi Prime, the Sci-Fi people gathered in the palace square to welcome Elias and his team. Elder Xeruan stepped forward. You have done what we could not. The Black Talons are gone. Our people are safe. Valen and Lariah embraced their daughter, Nerixa, tears of relief in their eyes. We can never thank you enough, Lariah whispered. Elias smiled. Just promise me this. If danger ever comes again, you'll be ready to fight for yourselves. Xeruan nodded. We will not be defenseless again. Jack sighed. So, no treasure, huh? Nova elbowed him. Saving a planet isn't enough for you. Jax grinned. I was just hoping for a little bonus. Elias turned to his crew. Come on, let's get off this rock. As the Iron Hawk lifted off, Elias glanced at the stars. The Black Talons were gone, but the galaxy was still full of danger. And if anyone needed help, the crew of the Iron Hawk would be ready.